I would like to make a short presentation based on some of the concerns that we have in our college, which is the Sir J.J. College of Architecture, Bombay. We have been largely concerned with aspects of metropolitan change over the last few years, both documenting and addressing and trying to generate alternatives for what there is. But this presentation essentially is in terms of, shall we say, a warning of what can possibly happen. Two cities, if we do not recognize them, especially the problem of aging cities, which is, say, from where I come, the city of Bombay, cities which are now more than 300 years old. But when I use the concept of aging cities, I don't mean it in terms of physical age. I mean it in terms of long-term occupancy. And that is something that I would like to talk about a little bit. This is just an image of the city as it is. We can see how dense an old city can be. Some of these areas, such as Kalba Devi and such areas, are some of the densest in the world. But nevertheless, we now have the state which makes policies for refurbishing these very places, and the name of the game is densification. In order to understand aging cities, I believe that we first need to see the cities as they are. And if we look at most aging cities, and most of my examples are, of course, Bombay, this is what we would tend to see. We describe it in terms of its canonical heritage and its iconicity. These are the standard buildings and monuments and areas, normally the pets of governments. They are very well maintained, they are accepted, they have a reverence. They present the city as the showpiece, but on the other hand, the city also consists of the inner parts of the cities, which are dense, congested, decrepit, dilapidated, but at the same time, at the level of occupancy, are extremely vibrant, networked, and socially rich places. One point which I would like to make is that when we have older cities, they develop over a period of time through accretion, through iteration. But when we talk about change, it is normally instant. And these two are fundamentally incompatible concepts, and we need to look at that a little more in detail. We also have planned precincts even in the middle of unplanned cities, and these normally give the urban fabric, the image of the urban fabric. They are places of contemporary urbanity. They are places where the settled middle class are. And then, of course, and this is something I would take a little more detail on, you have self-built communities. These proliferate outside the gaze of the state. Just like the inner cities, they are equally vibrant, networked, socially rich, but they are physically inadequate. They are challenged infrastructurally, and we popularly like to call them as slums. And in Bombay, of course, we have, the state has a mandate to remove slums. In all these cases, one of the problems is the issue of tenure. Especially when it comes to slums, we talk about them as illegal. But when you look at a city like Bombay, one would find that tenure is contested at all levels, not only at the level of slums which are automatically declared illegal or squatters, but say in the case of the inner cities, occupancy is normally based on earlier common law models of rent and what in Bombay we call pagdi. Most of these places, people occupy homes for maybe generations, and they come under the common law issues, but they're all stifled with the Rent Control Acts. Most people have no documents to show, but what they do have is simple occupancy. They are there, therefore they are there. And I think that when we look at change, there is a lot of problems which occur that change cannot happen until issues of tenures are resolved. And I would say that we cannot afford that necessarily to be a hindrance when we are looking at futures of cities. These are models of change which are already in process. One of the biggest problems which we see in Bombay is you try to fix those things which are not broken. And this has a common name called rehabilitation. What this does is it denies the presence of a city's layered history. It ignores the slow iterative growth of the city. It treats all parts of the city as the same, and therefore all parts of the city are open for change. The whole city is treated as a potential brownfield, which means that with laws that the government makes, any building, however old or however new, can be changed if the people desire change. And this is affecting some of the most cherished urban precincts in Bombay, which we now look at as, you know, the things that give the image of the city can be transformed overnight because of these very things. There is an idea that development and gentrification are kind of mistaken for each other. The intention of making new rules is to seek to assuage fairly unreasonable aspiration of individuals. Somebody in the morning talked about monetizing urban land value, and that is in fact the problem of Bombay, not the solution. And using the idea of monetization as an engine of change, all these are issues which I would suggest are issues that we can really contest, but they are issues which are in the making. I would like to, please excuse me if I give you a very short lecture on semiotics, and I believe that learnings from semiotics would help. Semiotics, of course, comes from language, and it is the science of signs. And there are two aspects to this. One is something called language, which are the rules by which we make up our language, which are the grammar and so on. And the other is something called parole, which are the ways by which we talk on a daily basis. These are colloquial things. These do not necessarily adhere to grammar, but they are common law accepted versions of the way we speak. The point to be made is that we do that on a day-to-day basis, and things do not change once they are accepted by the vast majority. And parole inevitably becomes a normative kind of thing in which everybody just accepts it, and this is how you behave. And I would suggest that in aging cities, that is exactly what happens, not in terms of language, but in terms of action. Okay? When there is a growing distance between the codification of law and its actual implementation, in this vacuum, something gets filled up, and we can call that the parole of action. For example, when we talk about the city of Bombay as having, you know, the inhabitants live, 70% of the inhabitants nearly live in slums, you are looking at a concept of parole, where the government laws, which are the language, really don't apply. Because even if there are laws, people do what they like. The problem with this is this big gap which has occurred between the making of the laws and the implementation of the laws. I would like to present very quickly three very unsatisfactory examples of urban change which we are seeing in Bombay. One is called rehabilitation, which I have already mentioned. The idea that change can occur if individuals within the city would like to have change to occur, irrespective of what is required for the city at large in terms of its urban fabric and so on. And the rules of the game say that one can bring in a developer to change a particular building, rehabilitate the people in one building, and then develop another very large building as a sale component which is sold at speculative pricing. Here you can see examples already in motion. Obviously, the lower ones are the rehabilitation components, and the tall buildings are the ones which are sold for enormous amounts of prices. Rehabilitation, please remember, is not necessarily for slums. In Bombay, rehabilitation can be for anybody, which means that people who have lived in in a place for maybe a generation or 2 generations are suddenly picked up and relocated into buildings such as these because they are part of the rules of the game. So we can look at an old city and you can also see the way these buildings are coming up one by one, but this, I am afraid, is what can happen if the whole idea of rehabilitation continues unabated. Another part of the city which is being looked at as an experiment, and this is one particular development which everybody is very eagerly looking at, is the idea of developing clusters, which is developing large parts of the city all together. And this is one project called the Bhendi Bazaar redevelopment project, which is in the most dense part of the city, which is being developed by the community of Dawoodi Bohras as a project for the future. And these are images of what is there today. The central square, which you can see bounded on all sides by roads, is the Bhendi Bazaar redevelopment project. And once it is done, this is what will happen. There is an image of, or there is a plan of converting about 200 buildings into 20 buildings. And this is the, from the brochure of the development project. One can see what has happened is that this kind of development creates gated communities, is quite exclusionary. You can actually see the gates which are there, which are not there before. The city, which belonged to everybody at a particular point in time, now will slowly and steadily be creating a set of filters which people can enter or not enter. The third unsatisfactory example, but in terms of urban community, is a thriving example over a very large part of the city, are self-built neighborhoods, or what we popularly call as slums. The general impression of slums are these photographs. You know, but my point in the case of Bombay is that even slums are up to 70 or 80 years old. So they begin in this manner, but they no longer last in this manner. They begin as these kind of tarpaulin or tented cities, but a lot of the slums in Bombay today actually look like this. Over a period of time, people have become, or the people's resources have increased. The very tight areas that they live in have now been reconverted into pakka RCC structures, and you may say that the people living in these are very much part of the contributing middle class of the city. Nevertheless, they live under the perpetual sword of being evacuated, and that slums will be kind of, you know, the city will be made slum free. In our college, we did some amount of interaction with people who live in slums by actually tackling with the contractors who build these slums. And somebody talked about rapid construction for affected people. These are people who have perfected the art of from demolition to handing over the keys to the owner to be able to make a pakka RCC structure in 45 days. One may say that they kind of ignore all ways of building, all standards, but these are things that they have learned by themselves. Remember, I'm talking about an RCC structure. This is not something which can be just taken down. I think that there is a lot to be learned from these contractors themselves when it comes to reconstruction. However, this itself is not a perfectly good situation because the one thing is that the conditions of inhabitation at a regional or a slightly large neighborhood level somehow are not very perfect. But the other answer to that, which is what I showed you in the first place, rehabilitation by taking the people who live in the erstwhile slums and putting them into very tight skyscraper kind of situations is not very good either. So all three of these examples, which form the vast majority of change which is happening in an aging city like Bombay, are unsatisfactory. The first two are clearly top-down approaches. They are approaches made by the state. The bottom one is essentially an approach which fills a vacuum where the state does not make its presence felt. So to conclude, in aging cities, the most vulnerable to change, both in policy and in practice, are those who have inhabited it the longest. The state cannot absolve itself of decades of benign neglect. It must acknowledge the vacuum it has created, and that other discourses have flourished, and over time they have got normalized. New laws, therefore, as I told you in the case of the semiotics, is not going to overturn common law practices. They will be safely ignored. The most significant result of this neglect is the proliferation of self-built neighborhoods, some very old, and they cannot be just wished away as illegal or squatters. Occupancy has to be acknowledged, if I may be controversial, irrespective of tenure. All this has ultimately led to this kind of situation in the city. If you will just hold up a hand and put a thumb and forefinger a little away from each other, you will realize that in some parts of Bombay, real estate sells at 700 rupees a square inch. At the extremes of Bombay, places like Jogeshwari, New Bombay, Powai, and these areas, real estate sells at the base price of 1 crore and above. So in Bombay, you have just two situations. You have slums or you have luxury housing. There is no middle ground. Affordability is just not there. And partly it is all these other reasons which have created this kind of situation. One of the main reasons why this situation is created is the outsourcing of infrastructural, especially housing projects by the state. And this has led to a burgeoning of unreasonable aspirations that have affected all aspects of our society. Even slum dwellers now look at selling their houses for about 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs. The speculative method treats rehabilitation as a burden to be fulfilled with minimum standards while generating land that can be sold to the highest bidder. And these highest bidders can indefinitely hold land waiting for prices to skyrocket. There is a plateau of unaffordability in the city's real estate, which means that no matter where you are in the city, the prices are the same. Speculators find it only worthwhile to build luxury housing. We have legislation that does consider the rights of the citizen only, but does not reflect at all the responsibilities of the citizen towards the city. And I would end by stating that I do believe that in case of cities, aging cities, cities like Bombay, the city has rights too. Thank you.